Yeah, he was playing great, and you know, his normal time to go back in would have been around the 5-6 minute mark.
He's not wrong in being upset and pissed off, wanting to play. Probably should have played. Not probably.
The Golden State Warriors look significantly different this year than they did last year. They lost one of their biggest franchise cornerstones in Klay Thompson, and they just about whiffed on any possible way to improve the roster. Now one of their biggest stars, who has been very vocal in the past, might be on the verge of leaving as well if he doesn't get his way. So we're breaking down this entire situation today. Before we get to the content, we're giving away copies of NBA 2K25 to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. If you follow me on Instagram at TheFlightMike and followed my Friday night picks for prize picks, then you made yourself some money. Unfortunately, I didn't get as lucky with the free square, but luckily for us, we're getting another free square for week 2. And once again, it's with Caleb Williams. All Caleb Williams needs is one passing yard versus the Houston Texans for his square to hit. We just gotta pair this with something that we believe is guaranteed and we'll automatically make ourselves some money. I'm gonna post my Caleb Williams pick onto my Instagram story when a new board comes out. And guys, use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you play a game of $5 or more. You don't even need to win to get the $50. It's guaranteed. This game's really fun, especially if you're good at projecting how players are going to do. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Golden State Warriors offseason has been one of the most tragic offseasons I think I've ever seen. There were so many different ways this offseason could have gone, including a possibility of them briefly improving their team and extending their championship window by signing and trading Klay Thompson, but also receiving Paul George in return. Apparently a deal was in place, but the Clippers were so petty that they preferred to lose Paul George for absolutely nothing as opposed to get some assets in return and help the Golden State Warriors.
I mean, there were other free agency moves, and Paul George is the biggest of the summer, and he is planning to sign a 4-year deal with the 76ers. Also a little salty about that because, as you all know, Paul George was going to come to the Warriors, and we wanted Paul George to come to the Warriors. You know, we always talk about these organizations, what they do for their players and whatnot. And for us to get Paul George, it would have taken a sign and trade, and the Clippers didn't really want to play ball. Didn't really want to help him get to where he wanted to go, and so in turn they get nothing back. You know, whereas you could have gotten something back for Paul George walking, they get absolutely nothing back. These organizations don't always be willing to play ball, and I don't think the Clippers were really willing to play ball for Paul George to get to the Warriors. I kind of understand it. I suppose you don't want him in the same division as you because you may know how that looks if he comes with us. That didn't quite pan out for us, which would have been nice.
Now, apparently there were discussions between the Clippers and the Warriors, and apparently the reason why talks fell through were the Warriors were unwilling to trade Jonathan Kuminga for Paul George. The Warriors offered multiple combinations of expiring contracts, young players, and an unprotected 2027 first-round pick. The Clippers countered by asking for prized youngster Jonathan Kuminga. The Warriors resisted because Kuminga is so important to their own future, but also they were worried that Paul George wouldn't be as interested in joining them if they gave up too much to get him. Again, I think this speaks to the Los Angeles Clippers' ineptitude, particularly because the Warriors' 2027 first-round pick is so valuable. At that point, Steph Curry's 39 years old. But even furthermore, this is a team that doesn't have a first-round pick until 2030, and they still opted to let one of their best assets walk away for free. So once that happened, the Golden State Warriors went for Plan B. Not this Plan B! But this Plan B.
What now with the Warriors with Klay gone?
Well, they'll do this sign and trade, and Klay Thompson's agent, Greg Lawrence, is finishing that with the teams. You know, they'll get back essentially a trade exception from Dallas. Listen, they've been trying to be aggressive in other places in Golden State. One player that a number of teams have tried to target, Lauri Markkanen of the Utah Jazz. Utah's not sure it wants to trade him, but they have to listen. They've been listening, And a lot of the teams who lost out on Mikal Bridges from Brooklyn have transferred over to trying to see if they can land Lauri Markkanen out of Utah. Golden State is one of those teams.
But Lauri Markkanen agreed to a contract extension with the Utah Jazz. So all the Warriors did was acquire Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield in a 6-team trade, signed DeAnthony Melton, and that's about it. And while I do think Buddy Hield definitely mitigates the damage of Klay Thompson's departure, I have to admit it would have been a lot of fun to see Lauri Markkanen, Steph Curry, and Buddy Hield on one offense. Those were pretty much the Warriors' biggest moves. That and the fact that Steph Curry agreed to a 1-year, $62 million contract extension, which means that he is going to be a Warrior for the rest of his life, and this also gives him flexibility moving forward if he wants to take pay cuts to help the Warriors add new talent. And this is where things get really complicated. You remember when we discussed Jonathan Kuminga earlier? Well, he's also up for a contract extension. And it seems like this is where the Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga are having some trouble. If you guys remember last year, Jonathan Kuminga went absolutely viral. So let's set the stage here. Back in January, the Denver Nuggets faced off against the Golden State Warriors in a game that went so bad that Jonathan Kuminga called out his head coach and said he lost faith in him completely. Kuminga would say that he doesn't believe that Steve Kerr will allow him to reach his full potential, and saying that that night was the straw that broke the camel's back. To give you an idea of what happened, Jonathan Kuminga had a remarkable performance against the defending champions, at least at that time they were the defending champions, with 16 points on 5 of 7 shooting, 4 rebounds and 4 assists, and was a team high +6, but he only played in 19 minutes. And what happened was he converted an and-one finish with 6 minutes left in the third quarter. And then to reward him, Steve Kerr substituted him out of the game 12 seconds later, along with Klay Thompson and Kevon Looney. Now, Klay Thompson would return to start the fourth quarter, and Looney came back in with under 8 minutes left, but Kuminga did not.
Yeah, he was playing great, and his normal time to go back in would have been around the 5-6 minute mark. And Wiggs was playing great. We were rolling. We're up 18, 19, whatever it was. And so we just stayed with him. And then at that point, it didn't feel, like it was the right thing to do. He'd been sitting for a while. So I stayed with the group that was out there. And obviously, we couldn't close it out.
The Warriors were down 85-84 when they took Kuminga out of the game. To close the third quarter, the group that included Wiggins and didn't include Kuminga helped build a 13-point lead that grew into an 18-point lead with 6 minutes left in the fourth. Kerr never went back to Kuminga, and the Warriors went on to blow the lead. The fourth time this season they've let at least an 18-point cushion turn into a loss. The problem was that Wiggins and Kuminga were just simply not good together, and this has been a problem since the 2023 postseason. But if you go all the way back, Kuminga was a very important part of the Warriors' climb to the 6th seed in those final 2 months where Wiggins was away from the team, tending to a personal matter. But when Wiggins returned for the first game of the playoffs, Kuminga faded from the rotation. But at that point, Kuminga was a significantly bigger part of the rotation, and he called out Kerr even more, saying, "Sometimes I come out of the game not knowing what I did, and that messes with my head. What do they want me to do? I can pass and I can do different shit." When Steve Kerr was asked why he didn't go back to Kuminga, this is what he said.
We weren't getting a great penetration. Earlier in the game, we were getting a lot of pocket passes, from the perimeter, and then playing kind of 4-on-3, 3-on-2, and we didn't get any of those. They really tightened up, and so we had to take a lot of contested shots, and just they buckled down. Like I said, I give them credit.
Now, fortunately for Kuminga, this worked. He got way more playing time as a result of it, and it completely turned around his career. But now, Jonathan Kuminga is eligible for a contract extension, and that's where things get really interesting. You see, in years past, this was very simple. All you had to do every single time a player's rookie scale contract expires is just max him out, especially if he was above average or had the potential to be great. I mean, it's literally what the Minnesota Timberwolves did with Andrew Wiggins. It's what you always would do in years past. It was so simple. The only exception I've ever seen in this case was the fact that the Phoenix Suns just let DeAndre Ayton hit restricted free agency and then matched his contract to what the Pacers offered him, which obviously pissed off DeAndre Ayton because his whole goal throughout his career was just to get paid. But at the end of the day, it was still a max contract, just with one less year. But the thing is, things are significantly different now that there's a brand new CBA. You don't automatically max out each and every player. It's why the Clippers didn't bring back Paul George larger, offer him a max contract, and we're kind of handicapped because they already maxed out Kawhi Leonard. It's why the New Orleans Pelicans are refusing to pay Brandon Ingram, and it's also why the Golden State Warriors also aren't considering offering Jonathan Kuminga a max extension. And that's where things get really interesting. So check this out. According to The Athletic's Anthony Slater, the Warriors aren't currently prepared to extend the full 5-year max offer to Jonathan Kuminga, and there hasn't been significant progress towards a deal at this point. Now, Slater didn't rule out the possibility that Kuminga might be willing to accept a lucrative offer for less than the max that would also benefit the team. That doesn't mean there isn't a reasonable middle ground, perhaps in the 30-ish million per season range as the deadline nears. Nobody can say for sure what will happen if Kuminga is presented a concrete life-changing financial offer, and the Warriors come to believe the deal will age well enough as the salary cap projects to skyrocket. There have been tentative extension discussions between the sides, league sources said, but a clear divide remains. Now, Jake Fisher mentions that Kuminga and his representatives were seeking a full max offer, but it's really hard to get that number unless if you're a bona fide all-star player due to the new apron. And you also have to understand that Kuminga at the same time is looking at his draft classmates, noticing that some teams don't care about this new apron. The most surprising contract extension of the entire offseason, in my opinion, was Franz Wagner, who got the full 5-year, $224 million rookie contract extension. And there's tremendous upside for Franz Wagner moving forward. 6'10", can guard multiple positions on the floor, averaged 19 points per game, but shot 48% from the field and shot 28% from 3. His OBPM left a lot to be desired, and so did his DBPM, but he had a 1.9 VORP last year. Now, look, I have nothing against Franz Wagner. It's just committing $224 million over the next 5 years for a player that's not even an all-star was just a little surprising given the brand new CBA. But it also complicates things for Jonathan Kuminga because you're looking at Franz Wagner and you might be thinking,
I'm better than Franz Wagner,
even though his statistics haven't really necessarily shown that so far. But you have to bear in mind, Franz Wagner got significantly more opportunity than Jonathan Kuminga did. Franz was on the Orlando Magic that were trying to turn things around and make a push towards contention, and he was one of the franchise cornerstones and key pieces for the Orlando Magic to do that. He averaged about 30 minutes per game throughout his career with the Magic, whereas Jonathan Kuminga went to a Golden State Warriors team that was already competing by the time he got there. He won an NBA championship with them, but the caveat of this is he hasn't gotten as much opportunity, which is why he called out Steve Kerr. So at the end of the day, what do I think is going to happen here? Does this mean that the Warriors need to trade Jonathan Kuminga? What's probably going to happen is Kuminga isn't going to agree to a contract extension with the Warriors throughout the regular season. They have until October to come to an agreement, but what's more likely to happen is we're in store for a Jonathan Kuminga breakout season. 2 years ago, Jonathan Kuminga averaged 9.9 points per game. Last year, that nearly doubled to 16 points per game. Kuminga's VORP jumped from a 0.1 2 years ago to a 0.8. And now that the bag is on the line for Jonathan Kuminga, you can expect him to work as hard as he possibly can to take up the scoring that is going to be left behind from Klay Thompson, because now the Warriors need someone new to lean on. Now, if there's no contract extension agreed to in October, this is pretty much going to be DeAndre Ayton 2.0, although with a player that has a significantly greater work ethic. And what do I mean by that? The Warriors are probably not going to agree to an extension with Kuminga, and nor should he agree to an extension with the Warriors, because if this runs all the way to next offseason, Kuminga becomes a restricted free agent. And in the past, restricted free agency was very simple. You hit restricted free agency, some team with a lot of cap space will offer you a max contract, and then if your team really feels like that's your market value, they'll match the contract. It's what happened with Ayton and the Phoenix Suns. But with the brand new CBA, it's a completely different ballgame. Some teams simply can't afford to match any max contract given to their young rising star. So if a team with a ton of cap space comes up to Jonathan Kuminga and offers him a 4-year, $180 million contract, then the Warriors could match that contract, which would mean they get one less year of Kuminga, but they still have the rights to match him if that's what his market value is. But I'm expecting Jonathan Kuminga to have a breakout season as a result of this, because his bag is on the line. But if you're a Warriors fan, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about all this? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.